tendency, which are the things that you've done before, like mean, median, mode, range, outlier, those types of things. Let's look at our first example of quiz grades. So let's take somebody's quiz grades, and I'm not going to tell you who it is, but we'll take their quiz grades. You can guess if it's you or not. We'll look at their quiz grades. They got, let's say, a 90, an 85, a 90, 100, 95, and then a 70.
Oh, that's not me.
So that's their quiz grades. Now, whenever you're using the measures of central tendency, you always want to keep your numbers in order from least to greatest. They're easier to keep track of, and you'll have to use that for things like the median. So what I always do is I always make sure that they're in order. These obviously are not. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite these so that they show up in order. So my 70 is taken care of, and then it's 85, then a 90, then another 90, then my 95, and then my largest was the 100. So all my numbers are accounted for. Now the measures of central tendency are going to be your mean, your median, mode, range, and outlier. So those are going to be the main ones that we're going to focus on this year. Now, who remembers how to find the mean? Zach?
You add all the numbers up and divide how many down.
Love it. So I add up all my numbers. 70 plus 85 plus 90 plus 90 plus 95 plus 100. And together it is 530.
Oh, yeah.
Now we have to divide by the number of numbers. So we're going to divide it by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 6 numbers. And when we hit equals, we have 88.3. So 88.3 repeating. We use the repeating bar. Now we've got median. Who remembers how to find the median? Lena? Alright, so she says we cross out each of the sides until we get to the middle number. The median is the middle. Think of it like if you were driving down the highway, particularly like 71 or 75, and there's that grassy part in the middle where the cop sits.
Yeah.
That's the median. That's the middle part. So we can cross off. We've got 2 numbers here in the middle. So what we have to do is find the number in between those. This one's not real difficult because it's the same number. But when you have to find the number in between there, you add up your numbers and divide by 2. So you add up your numbers, 90 plus 90, and get 180. Then divide it by 2, which gives you 90. So the median of your data set is going to be 90. What is the mode?
Ooh, what is this?
Who's got it?
Tyler? 90. How do you know it's 90?
Ooh, I know how.
Yeah, that's right. The mode is the number that occurs the most often. So when we look at this, there's a 90, there's a 90, there's 2 90s, which is more than all of your other numbers. What about the range? 80?
30.
30, and how'd you get that?
So 100 minus 30.
Yeah. The range isn't really used to describe the numbers in your data set. It's used to describe how spread out it is. So the smaller the range, the closer your numbers are together. So if I told you that your quiz grades had a range of 5, and someone else had a quiz grade range of 80, what that tells you is that the person who has a quiz grade range of 5, all of their numbers are really close together, like 95 and 100, or like 70 and 75. So really, really close together. Somebody who has a really long or really wide range kind of has really good grades and really low grades. So it just kind of helps to describe what your data looks like. Yes, ma'am? The mode is the number that occurs the most often. So it's just whatever shows up the most. Yes. You can.
Outlier 70.
Yeah, the outlier is the most difficult one to teach because it really depends on what your data is and where your data is. Sometimes there's going to be really clear outliers, like one number that's way outside the normal range. And sometimes it's going to be like, well, it's kind of outside, but not really way outside. So maybe it is, maybe it's not. It just kind of depends on the data and what you're looking at. If you're talking about like the number of siblings somebody has, and someone says like 8, you're like, wow, that seems like that would be way outside the normal. But I can think of about 4 or 5 people on our team who have 8 siblings. So maybe it's not way outside the range. So that's the idea of an outlier. One way that really helps us to determine if something is an outlier is by creating what's called a distribution or a frequency table. What I'm going to do is I'm going to graph all of our data. So our lowest number is 70, so I'm going to make sure that I have 70 on our graph, 75, and then I'm going to do 80 right here, then 85, 90, 95, and 100. So I'm going to create a table here. Now, it's not going to be perfect, but it'll kind of give you an idea of what we're looking for. So I'm going to graph that 70. I'll put the 70 right here. Then I'm going to graph the 85. Put the 85 right there. Do a 90. I've got another 90, so I'm going to put that one on top there. I got a 95. Put that right there. And we got 100. When we do that, it gets much easier to see where that outlier is. And we can look at that and say, yeah, that 70 is way outside the rest of the data. Let's say that it's closer to Christmas time and your parents are trying to decide if you really need that new game or not. Which of these measures of central tendency are you going to tell them and explain and really focus on when you're talking about your schoolwork? Kevin?
Higher grades.
Sure, like your median and your mode, right? Yeah, I'm definitely going to mom and saying, but mom, most of my grades on my quizzes have been 90s. I'm an awesome student. Those are 90s. That's an A. So most of my grades are an A. Is that true?
Yeah.
That's absolutely true. Most of the grades are an A. That's absolutely true. But then they're going to come back to you and say, well, how is it that most of your grades are an A, but your average is a B? How would you defend yourself? Scout? So you got that one outlier and say, Mom and Dad, that is not my normal area. That's not where my grades are really at. And say, well, if I had not got that 70, what would your average be? Find it. If you remove that outlier, what would your average be? Maggie? So it's a 92 without the outlier. Which one, now, if these were your quiz grades or if they were a friend's quiz grade, which of these numbers do you think is really a more accurate representation of what they know?
92.
Probably a 92. I'm looking at their grades, and all of their grades seem to be right in that area there. I think a 92 is a really, really good representation. That 70 could have been like a really bad day for them. They could have been sick. They could have been absent like the week before that we covered that material. So there's a lot of reasons that someone may not have done really well on that test. But being able to kind of demonstrate this and show this is what makes this important. This is really useful information. By the way, people skew data all the time. Whenever someone collects data, they're only going to project the data that makes them look good. Car companies, when they collect data about their cars, they're not going to tell you when it has low gas mileage. They'll tell you how comfortable the seats are. They're not going to tell you that the roof falls off. They're going to tell you that the engine's really, really powerful. They're not going to tell you that the brakes won't last very long, but they'll tell you that it's a really quick car. So they'll always kind of influence your decision making by using the numbers. Say, Mom and Dad, I got 90s on all my grades, and then they're going to come back and say, yeah, but, and then you have to defend yourself. So that's kind of an example of your mean, median, mode, and range. There is another data set. Let's look at one more example. This one will have maybe a couple more numbers. I'll do you a favor and I'll put them in order already for you. I'm just that kind of guy.
Thank you.
I know, right?
Are these test grades?
These are also test grades, yes.
Oh, now this is probably. Oh no, that's me. Ooh. Are these real?
The ones on the top were real. These are made up. I wanted our data to show something, and the top one did not show it, and I want the bottom one to show it.
So we do like everything.
So calculate your central tendencies. Created a frequency table there also. So what will the mean of our data set be?
What answers?
Lena, what's the mean going to be? So you round it up? Here's what I would do is I would find it and 75, 76, 86, 88, 89, 92, and then divide it by, what is that, 7? So what she did was she rounded it and she said, well, it's 79.7, which seems like it's really close to an 80. What I would do is I would carry it out to probably the hundredths place at 79.71. What is the median of this data set? Zach? 86, and the way we get that is we cross off. We cross off, cross off, cross off, so it leaves it right there in the middle. What about the mode for this data set? Maggie? Yeah, no mode. And that's what I really wanted you to see here, was that there is no number that occurs most often. The mode in this case is no mode. Do not put 0. 0 is not the mode. It's not 0. It's no mode. And then what's the range of this data set? Aiden?
40.
Yeah, it's the largest minus the smallest. And is there an outlier?
Yes.
Emily? 52, yeah. So 52 is our outlier for that data set.